On this week's episode of the Fast Baseball Development Podcast, Connor and I talk about an interesting question regarding past figures and technology. We talk about why the evaluation and assessment process is so important for our athletes and why we utilize it so much. And then Connor comes in with a question about how do you describe that?
I would describe it as can I pitch in a game?
Can I pitch in a game? All that and more on the Fast Baseball Development Podcast. Welcome back to the Fast Baseball Development Podcast. We're very happy you're here. I'm your host, Cole Thomas, with my lovely co-host,
Connor Reynolds.
Connor. I have a question for you. Something that Jason and I came up with. He thought this was a good idea. In the data era that we live in now, we have all these metrics. We have HitTrax, we have TrackMan, we have Rapsodo, we have all this kind of technology. That's your blast motion sensors. If you could take any retired, dead player from the past and put them on a HitTrax or put them on a TrackMan, who would it be?
Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron?
Hank
Why?
Aaron. I want to see the output on blast motion that man does. Like, I want to see what those numbers are because I feel like an average.
I feel like you've prepped for this question,
dude. You kind of just threw me on the spot, and like once you started saying it, I originally thought you were going to go with what would be the one piece of tech you would only use, and then you said what old former player, and I immediately was like, all right, let's go through. Earlier we were talking about Babe Ruth a little bit, and honestly do not want to see those numbers.
I'd be fascinated.
I would be interested, but if I had to pick one dude, like it's either Hank Aaron or I would say Mickey Mantle, but I feel like speed was more like, obviously he, could swing the bat really well, but I also feel like speed was a little bit part of his game, why he was so good. Mm-hmm. I just want to see like somebody like, I'm thinking,
there's so many people you could think of.
I'm also thinking like Barry Bonds in like 01.
Oh,
like that would be.
Well, I was saying that because I previewed with some of the guys I trained today as we're recording this, and I was just like, I would love to see on TrackMan or HitTrax. I would love to see all those guys from the steroid era. I'm just like, how much above everybody else, like even by today's standards, were they hitting baseballs at?
Like for me. And it wouldn't as much be like HitTrax, but blast motion. Like,
right.
Obviously, you have to hit the ball really hard, consistently with barrel to be able to, hit as many home runs as those guys have. I want to see their output. I want to see the rotation because MLB average on rotation is right below 17. I've got a couple of guys that will get above that, but their bat speed will be a little bit lower than stuff, like a little bit of a trade-off. Like, I want to see what that dude's producing. Like, I would love to see how violent of a swing he had. And, like, truly, like...
Is this Aaron or Barry?
Yes. But my answer would be Hank for, like, his entire career.
Right.
Or for Barry, I would mostly just want to see, like, what was it, 01, where it was the home run race?
The home... Okay, when he was chasing Aaron.
Yeah, like, for me, like, it would either...
Or no, he was... Who was he? He would have been chasing McGuire.
Yeah, it was him and McGuire going back and forth.
Well, you're thinking of Sosa McGuire, and then Barry was after that trying to beat McGuire.
What year was Barry? Barry and McGuire were what year? Was that 01?
So no, Barry and Sosa was 97. It was right after the strike, that first strike.
Yeah,
right, and they were chasing Roger Maris for you youngins who don't know all that stuff. And then what was it? 3 or 4 years later, was Barry trying to chase McGuire.
What was the year that Barry hit? The home run off of Gagne.
Gagne, that would have been 01.
Okay, yeah. So I would like to see Barry just in 01,
right,
or Hank his entire career.
Okay.
That for me, like that's what I would. Like that though.
I'd be down for that. I said a weird one was Satchel Paige. I would love to get Satchel Paige on a TrackMan because if you ever read anything about Satchel Paige. Read bios or things like that.
Not too much.
There was a biography that came out 10 years ago about him. And it was one of those, and I listened to a podcast, it was an NPR podcast, and they talked about this bug and just how he shaped baseball and just the way it's so kind of bizarre how baseball was run from that like 1910s to the 1940s and the 50s. Like, Satchel Paige pitched for 4 decades at a high level, right? But they said, but if you read or if you ever read about him, they would say that he was just a guy who always kind of experimented pitches. He had like any kind of pitch in any kind of situation. He had like a fast curve. He had a slow curve. He had he would throw curveballs from like different arm slots. He would throw like changeups. He'd throw splitters. He'd throw sliders, just all these kinds of things. And then there was like reports, and obviously this is very unsubstantiated. And you and I are on the same page about guys when old school guys will always say, we threw just as hard as the guys today.
Using motorcycles.
Yeah, using motorcycles, or, they just say like, oh, you guys just manipulate the guns or whatever. Oh, but there was a report or someone had said that Satchel sat anywhere between 100 and 105. And I'm like, but I think my curiosity in that question is just, how do these guys stack up to today's players?
Yeah.
Right. And what is the difference between, modern players like your Aaron Judge or your Verlander, Garrett Cole, Hunter Green, all these guys who are just, they're like giants and gods of baseball now compared to the gods of yesteryear.
Right.
I see it as the same argument where people always say like, who's the GOAT in basketball? Like, who's the greatest in basketball? And I would think we would both say it's kind of a dumb argument because the eras are so different. And same goes with baseball. There's so many different eras that it's so incredibly hard to judge a player based on, like, how would Aaron Judge compete in the 1960s on the 1960s Yankees teams, right? How would Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris compete on the 2022 Yankees, right? It's two completely different eras, two completely different styles of play. So I find it very unfair to make those comparisons.
And I was even thinking about it oddly today, where just thinking back to when we were in high school compared to guys in high school today, when I was going through, anybody that was over 90, like 90 to 94 was like
legit.
Oh my Lord, like, who is that? And whereas today, you got dudes that are, up to 96 in Colorado. And that's, to me, where it's like, just in the last couple of years, it's changed so much. How much has it changed at the top level from 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? I like that question a lot, dude. I like it a lot. Well done.
I appreciate it. But it's one of those, like, like, how many guys are much better built now than they were even 10 years ago when you and I were in high school?
Oh yeah.
It's the same argument I get with the old school guys, is like, you can't possibly with a straight face tell me that this guy back in the 80s threw just as hard as Garrett Cole or Chapman in his prime and all these guys. Like, the two athletes are two completely different athletes.
And it's even looking at, let alone the training. Like,
right.
They had to have second jobs almost back then.
Well, the nutrition, the training, the dedication to a craft. And don't get me wrong, I would imagine there's leeway that where maybe off speed may be better, just because you just had to utilize off speed more because you didn't throw hard.
Yeah, the
or
separation of pitch speed
exactly.
a lot tighter.
Right. And it's just, and I think there's definitely there's a lot more to craftiness at those older levels back in the day as there is now, but because there's almost no need to be crafty as we would define it, right? It's just, here's a slider, here's how much it needs to spin, here's how much it needs to move, just throw that. Right. There's not, and that's what I hate a little bit about this era, is there's not as much like practice on just random things. Just like, let me just throw out this changeup and see what happens. I feel like there's youth parents and youth coaches just say, hey, here's a changeup grip. Now just throw it. I don't care what happens. Just, you need to have quote unquote a changeup.
Well, and I would also bring that to how much guys are experimenting outside. Like, guys aren't as outside playing wiffle ball like we used to.
Right.
Now, and that's not saying that it's wrong or anything, but like, we were able to go through and, if we failed, it was our buddy hitting a home run in wiffle ball.
Right.
Versus now us failing, it's a coach yelling at you or this or that. And so I feel like it's a lot more kind of cookie cutter these days for guys to go through. And I mean, we've talked about how guys are almost scared or nervous to try different things, to try a new stance or a bat or this or that. And it may not even be a new stance in the game. I'm just talking like in the cage, just practicing swinging. Like they're terrified to do different stances. I had a kid grab a different weird bat and was like nervous to use it. And I was like, why are you nervous? He's like, well, I think I might miss. I was like, okay.
That's the point.
So what? Like,
you're going to miss a lot.
Cool. Okay. And they're just scared, I think, to try new things or different things. And like for us, that's where I think fast is a little bit different, where we allow kids to fail and we give them more rope. So that way, you know, it's not a tight leash on, hey, nope, you did that wrong or you did this. It's, hey, like, let's take 5 swings and figure it out. There's a lot more failure that guys are able to go through. Whereas these days, you know, coaches are a lot more strict on different things. And so they don't get the freedom, I think, to play around with stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. That was a good, I think that was a good little tangent we went on there. If you guys anywhere in the comments on Twitter and on the comments in the YouTube down below, who would you want to see on TrackMan or on Rhapsodo or on the hit tracks? Anybody, old school players. Think old school players like
pre-210.
Yeah, pre-2010s. You know, who's we got one here.
I want to see Pujols when he first came in. I want to see his first 2 years on hit tracks.
When he was 30
the
or
machine, bro. I want to see like the machine. I want to see his first like 2 years, and I want to compare.
See, here's what we could go on a whole tangent. I mean, you go Pujols and Aaron. Like I could go Satchel Paige. I can go Randy Johnson. I would love to see. I would love to see Pedro's like splitter on a track, man. Like, what did that thing look like?
That thing has to be disgusting.
It's just, you know, it's like, you could go down the line, like how, like all the Hall of Famers, and they're just like, what did you have? How hard did you hit this ball? Like, you can just go and just decide, like, I'm going to take every guy who has hit 500 career home runs, and just let's see, like, what separated you from everybody else beyond maybe longevity, obviously.
Right.
All right, obviously longevity is going to be a major part of that, but like exactly, it's like how many, like what pitchers can I put on there? I could put Gibson, I could put, you know, Johnson, Clemens, Eric Gagne. But I mean, they kind of have an idea of what Gagne did. I mean, you've seen those momentum videos, but like who else could you put? You could put like perfect one. You know who I was going to say?
Who?
Maddox. Maddox, one, because I would just say like it's one of those things where we get into the argument all the time of like Maddox was a control pitcher, hit his spots. Like exactly. He's like, did you see how those balls move? Like that's what separate. I mean, he could hit a spot, but he was also maybe one like, and I've never met Greg Maddox, but this is why I was just like, you know, what was your intention there? Were you always trying to hit spots, or did you just know like I have elite movement, so I'm just going to throw this ball down the dick and just let the thing do its thing and just let the ball dance. Let it dance. Right? It's one like how what separated Nolan or Greg? What separates Greg Maddox from Nolan Ryan? Right? Where was the difference between Roger Clemens and Nolan Ryan? Two fastball predominant pitchers, like the guys who were like they're the fastest of their era, right? They just throw wicked fastballs, and obviously they have good elite, you know, off speed as well. But like, you know, where was Nolan Ryan in compared to Roger Clemens? Where is Roger Clemens now in relation to Justin Verlander? Like where is that elevation? Where are those changes? Where are those evolutions in the pitching side? And the same thing would go with hitting. Like does hand speed stay constant throughout the eras? Or, you know, is hand speed same, but then rotation is different? Like we're better rotationally than we've ever been, right? Or is hand speed does hand speed change while the rotation stays the same? What's like on plane efficiency for Ted Williams?
I would be 1,000. I'd be interested in seeing the what was I going to say?
We'll cut this.
What the fuck?
Keep it in.
Yeah, we're keeping that in. Fuck, what was I going to say?
What team?
No, it was going to be a metric.
Oh, okay. Like barrel percent.
That's
here
what
we
it
go.
was. I'd be really interested in see if attack angle is different with how speed and off speed are changing. Like,
Okay.
I'd be really intrigued to see if guys have changed their attack angle with one. Now guys are a lot more focused on, understanding when I hit the ball in the air hard, it goes further than if I hit it in the ground hard. So I'd be really intrigued to see if there is a like MLB average of attack angle from like the 80s to like 2010, 2020. That for me, I think would be a really interesting one.
That would be very. I would love this. I think it would. I mean, into your kind of your point, but on the pitching side would be like, how do spin rates change? Your spin rates the same? Are they constant? Because I would imagine if I was going to hypothesize, I feel like spin rates don't change. Like on the average, right? Like you're always going to have your elite spinners and your below average spinners. But it's one of those things. Like I've now done enough research, and the research I have seen, it's just spin rate is just kind of spin rate, and it just kind of happens. There's not like there's some things you can do that modify it, but as a whole, there's not other than artificial enhancement. But other than that, there's nothing you can really do to like gain 500 RPM on your fastball spin.
Do you think it's changed now that we are able to quantify it though? Like now that how power numbers are able to be easier quantified. So it's like, oh, we have a better understanding of why power numbers are like, because I mean, obviously the attacking high fastballs hasn't always been a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like high fastballs have been used for setups to throw like a dirt curveball. Whereas now guys are utilizing high fastballs because they know that their fastball, rises or whatever. Like, I put that in air quotes because I know it doesn't actually rise.
Well, I think it's the understanding the advanced metrics, right? It's understanding like if you're a high spin fastball guy and you throw the ball up, your percentage of strikeouts is going to go through the roof. Right. Whereas, but in the olden days, like when you and I were in college or in high school, like for me as a pitcher, I was always told no matter what, just bang knees, bang knees, bang knees. Yep. Right. And it's one of those things where you tell it's like we just didn't know that stuff. And obviously I was in junior college before Rhapsody was a thing. Like, and TrackMan was like, it was only available in big league. Yeah, it's only available in the big league parks and kind of in the minors, but mainly it was just all big leagues. Yeah. Right. And I don't even think TrackMan was used when I was in college for the MLB. I don't even know what they used before TrackMan. But that's just stuff just didn't exist. So it was just bang knees, bang knees. We're just going to do the same shit we've done for over 100 years. Yeah. But now you're like, okay, this guy throws this spin rating with this velocity, and he throws that ball up, his strikeout percentage goes up, and that's where he gets his outs. But he gets punished with doubles and home runs. If you're a below average guy, you're that guy who can bang knees. We got to throw turbo sinkers and hit balls on the ground. But your damage comes from just bleeders. Yeah. Or as I say, like, I mean, you and I have heard it all the time where it's always weird for a hitting coach to tell a hitter, hit the ball on the ground, get ground balls, just get the ball in play, right? Yeah. But on the pitching side, it was the exact same thing. Hey, pitch to contact, get the ball, get a ground ball.
Which is why it's never made sense.
Are there two? You're saying the same thing, but your goals are totally different. What are we talking about today, Connor?
Going to go over what it looks like when we go through an assessment with a new player or we're reassessing a former player.
Okay. So we're basically going to talk about the importance of getting evaluated, getting assessed. Why do you on the hitting side find assessment or evaluation so important?
Massively, the big thing that I find is that a lot of players, when they come through initially, they may have had success on their, summer team, spring team, fall team, whatever it is. But the competition level that they're seeing is either A, not the competition level they need to be seeing to be actually competing, or B, they're kind of just like the dog, you know what I'm saying? And so they're not too sure where they actually stand. They just know that on their team, they're 3-hole hitter, 4-hole hitter, whatever it may be, they're 9-hole hitter. And so they're not too sure of where they stand, either A, in Colorado, or B, in the country. And so going through and being able to give a player an assessment and actually tell them where they actually stand on a college recruiting level at minimal, that's because colleges are looking at dudes nationwide, sometimes internationally. And so you might be the dude or the dog on your 16U team at your high school, whatever it is. That doesn't mean that you are a dude on a college radar. And so going through and actually telling them what stats matter or what data points matter, that is a big thing just for them to know. You don't know what you don't know. And so if we're looking for something, or if me as an instructor is trying to get them to a certain point, I want them to know, one, why we need to get to that point, and two, how we're going to get to that point together. And so for me, that's the big importance of a assessment. What about you on the pitching side?
Pitching side's pretty similar. We like to use an evaluation. So what we do for the pitching side is we have like a kind of a two-pronged assessment. We utilize a movement assessment from On Base U, which is an offshoot of the Titleist Performance Center. So they work with most of the top golfers in the world. They do biomechanics readings. I mean, if you've ever seen what they do, you should follow them on Instagram. It's incredible what those guys do.
Really good stuff.
Really good stuff. And they strap up the most elite golfers in the world. And they made a thing for baseball too. They started out in hitting, and then they've also moved into pitching as well. And I think they just moved into softball as we're recording this too. They did a softball seminar not too long ago. But it's, how do you understand? So we utilized on-base use screening. We basically will put every athlete through the screening. Doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, I guess there is kind of a level. Like if you're 9 years old, I'm not going to do it on you. But, it gives us an idea. We take you through a series of movements that are pretty relevant to the baseball throw. So your pitching motion, like a deep squat, see how well you have shoulder external mobility, your internal external rotation in your hips, how well you can control your pelvis. It's amazing how many guys don't know how to control their pelvis, but this is something we'll touch on probably later. I imagine we'll go down this route, but we take you through a movement screen to see how well you move and how mobile you are, how stable you are, right? Then we move it into, all right, now let's take you on to the TrackMan and let's see what all your pitches do. While we're doing the TrackMan stuff, we're taking video from the side view and from behind. 2 videos from the side. One's just a slow-mo, and one's that we use for our biomechanics feedback. And then we use another one where we just take a video through, like, I used to use Coach's Eye. I don't think Coach's Eye is a thing anymore. Right. So I use like Dart. I think I do like Dartfish Express, and there's a million things you can find on the App Store that all do the exact same technology. But take those, that way we can go through a point by point, like 16-point assessment of where you are in the throwing motion, what's on time, what's good, do we see what are our inefficiencies in the pitching motion? That's all the video stuff. Then we go on to the TrackMan. Like, what does your fastball look like? What's the spin rate? What's his vertical break, horizontal break? What's the velocity? Then throw changeups, exact same thing. Sliders, curveballs, knuckleballs, cutters, splitters, anything you think you can throw, we can throw on there, and we can see where do those line up? And then it's the exact same where you go into where are you elite, where are you average, and where are you below average, right? Where do you stand in the greater scheme of baseball players at your age level? Where do you stand if you're a high school guy? Are you a bottom 25%? Are you about a roughly 50th percentile, top 25, and a top 10 guy? Where do you stand in this whole thing? And I feel something you and I have touched on many times outside of here is, and the reason assessment is so vital and so important is we live in an era now where you have zero excuse to not know everything about yourself. I feel there's so many guys who come in and just like, I just play baseball and I'm pretty successful. My stats are pretty good, but it's like, why are you successful? And they're like, I couldn't tell you. Like, I couldn't tell you why I had a 250 ERA this year and I struck out this many guys, walked this many guys, right? And I gave up this many home runs or this many doubles or things like that, right? And so we live in an era now where that stuff, you can't not know who you are as an athlete or as a baseball player, and you can't not know how to improve yourself as a baseball player and athlete. There's too much data out there. There's almost every facility now has some kind of a pitch tracking system, right? Most places have a hit tracks. We're lucky that we have both a hit tracks and a TrackMan, two of the best top of the line technologies for hitters and for pitchers, and TrackMan can do both. Hit tracks is pretty only good for hitting. Pitching, I don't like the pitching side of that. But every facility's got these things. You just have to be willing to go and test yourself out. Where do you stand in these things, right? So at the end of the day, if you don't know who you are, how do you intend to get better?
I like that.
Right.
And it's one of those where if you had a 2.5 ERA and you had a great season, but you don't know why, how are you going to be able to redo that? Like, if you're not sure the things that made you successful or the things that made you fail, you're not going to either A, be able to learn from that, or B, repeat those.
Right.
And so for us, that's a major thing in being able to break it down. On the hitting side, we're going to only look at a couple of main ones, but like I said, these are the main ones. For me, on blast motion, we're going to be looking at bat speed. We're going to see how fast your bat's able to move. Generally, for every 1 mile an hour of bat speed, we're able to increase our exit velocity about 1.2, 1.5 miles an hour. And so if if you come in and you're like, I want to hit the ball harder, I want to have better power, but your bat speed's really low. Hey, we just found out why you're, not hitting the ball as hard as you want. Rotational acceleration is going to be another big one. Essentially, think of you have a minivan and then you have a Ferrari. Both of them can go 60, so that's your bat speed. But that Ferrari is going to be able to go from 60 to 80 really quick. And they're going to be able to make a decision change really fast. Where the minivan is going to take a little bit longer to get going.
Right.
And so rotational acceleration is going to be a big one for us. Then that essentially is what we call pre-contact data. So that's what you as a hitter are able to produce. Then when we're looking at post-contact data, that's where we bring in hit tracks. We're going to be looking at exit velocity, so how hard you are hitting it once you make contact, and then distance. A lot of those are going to tie into, if we see guys with high exit velos below distance, generally the launch angle is not on par. They're going to be hitting the ball straight in the ground. Hit track stops tracking distance once the ball makes contact with the ground. So you might be hitting know why they've been successful, and they may not know why they've failed. And so when you're looking at a pitching arsenal, you might see a high spin rate guy, and you're like, man, like you said earlier, a hard 12-6, that would pair up right with you, but he hasn't been throwing a hard 12-6
Right.
and stuff like that. And so just them understanding who they are as a player is massive. One of the other things that part of my assessment is I'll actually ask them what they think their hot zones are. And so we'll go through and I was like, all right, where are you cold? Where are you hot? Where are your zones? And then I'll take that and I'll compare it to what HitTrack says.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of times that guys have gone through and oh, I normally suck at that pitch. And my theory is, let's say a guy goes through, let's say you get, 4 pitches thrown to you low and away.
Right.
And you hit one of those 4 or 2 of those 4 well. But you get thrown, like I say, high and inside 15 times. And you're successful, let's say, 4 of those times, 4 out of 15. If you're successful 4 out of 15 times on the inside and successful 2 out of 4 times low and away, and you're only looking at output numbers, you're going to think that you're more successful hitting the inside pitch than you are away. So you might, as a hitter, start taking away and hunting inside where you actually suck more on the inside pitch, but because you've only had a few more opportunities to hit the inside pitch, that's why you've been successful. We're able to say hey, I actually think you should take away the inside pitch early on counts and hunt away, because you may not have as much success. You're more successful on the opportunities that you have. And so the amount of odd looks that I've gotten from guys who are like, wait, really? It's like, yeah, look at the numbers. Like, you hit the ball harder, you hit the ball further, you do this, you do that on these pitches. You just don't swing at those enough to give yourself the idea of, oh, wow, I drive that pitch often. And so for guys to just see that, and like, I don't do anything different. It's just where they think they are mentally versus where they actually are. And just to change that on the hitting side, and I'm sure on the pitching arsenal side, we've had guys that are just like, oh, wow, I can be how much more successful if I just quit throwing that pitch and just start throwing this pitch.
Well,
it's insane.
It's very interesting to watch how many guys have actually elite pitches that they never throw. Like one of our tandem kids that we both work with, Aiden, is like, he goes like, I'm like, throw your changeup when we did the eval with him. He's like, oh, I just never throw this thing. I'm not confident in it. And then he throws it. I'm like, dude, that's an elite changeup. Like, you should throw that way more. And he goes like, really? But it's the same thing with there's a lot of guys like, I'll ask someone like, how do you get your majority of your outs? Like, especially if it's like usually a high spin fastball guy. I'm like, how do you get the majority of your outs? Like, strikeouts, and I get ground balls and all that. And it's very funny, like, how many guys don't know what makes them successful or how they could be more successful. Because I'll tell guys all the time, you're a high spin fastball guy, you should live belt high, right? Because your ball's going to have that illusion of rising fastballs, and then you can throw sliders or curveballs or changeups down and away, and you keep those things on the same kind of a similar arm path, and you tunnel those better, right? But it's the same thing. I've had guys who, and it's one of those things where you get to know it, and what's your line? I'm interested. What's your line in when to use tech and when to not use tech?
Let me have you elaborate more.
Okay.
In the sense of teaching, or when just out on the floor in a session?
I would say like, yeah, in a floor, like there's combos in, right, teaching and on the floor.
I mean, I pretty much have hit tracks or blast motion on every single swing with cameras on, but we may not use it as a teaching point where it's kind of just on in the background. I would probably say depends on the guy. Like if I have someone that is just struggling to buy in, I will use the tech and use as demonstrations.
Right.
Like today I had a kid going through, I was having to use a connection ball, and 8th grader hasn't used funky stuff before. And so when I first had him use it,
there's a bit of like a validation.
Yeah,
thing,
he's a big barrel dump guy. So right when he starts to swing, he literally loses his arm, loses the barrel, everything like that. Now, athletic had shrunk it, so he was making it work, but everything was pull side and had to be pull side.
Right.
And so bat speed was down just because he's not rotating as well as he could. We throw this connection ball in for his first probably like 10 swings. Dude was like chicken winging it, and he was like scared to swing. And I was asking him why. He's like, well, it's just weird. It's just weird. It's just weird. And so finally I was like, dude, I want you to swing so hard you think you might swing and miss on this one.
Okay.
We had 4 in a row. Dude ended up getting PRs. And he like looked at me. He's like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, like just using the technology to show them. Cause like, it's very hard for a hitter, let alone, well, instructors struggle with it. But like as a hitter, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between 66 and 61. Like you have an idea between 66 and 56, but once you start getting within like 5 miles an hour, it's really tough to honestly like tell. And so for him, he jumped like 5 miles an hour, like just in a matter of like, oh, I just have to trust this or use this. So using technology to that extent, not too often, I would say like case to case, but I have hit tracks on every single swing. We've moved to where every single player, 8th grade and up, has their own blast motion account.
Right.
And so now literally if they're taking a swing, there is data being used or tracked. Now, is it being used as the teaching point, or is it being used just to be able to capture data, see where we're at, and then use it as a teaching point at another session? It kind of just varies.
All right. So I see what I like. I like where you were going there, but maybe this was maybe this is just will show that pitchers are bigger mental midgets than hitters are. Maybe this will just show the mental differences between hitters and pitchers. But where do you where do you draw the line, or at what point do you think, okay, maybe I made this kid too overly dependent on his blast motion, like where he's got to like, what was my bat speed there? What was my on-plane efficiency? It's the same thing we do with TrackMan or Rhapsodo. We had a Rhapsodo. It's
Fuck Rhapsodo.
Early on, we would always give guys the opportunity to, okay, here's what your spin rate was, here was what your movement is. But then you've got to, at some point, kind of wean them off of that technology and just trust that the stuff they've worked on is going to work. Because I tell guys all the time when I tell, like, we'll have the TrackMan on, and I'm just like, they're like, oh, what was that? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you.
Nope.
No, go throw. Trust everything we've worked on, because it's going to be the same thing. Like, it's going to be very embarrassing if you're a pitcher, you throw a fastball, and you like run over the nose. Like, what was the spin rate on that one?
The scoreboard guy every throw.
Right, but even like exactly, but like we get, where do you like say like I'm going to cut you off on this because you can't be overly dependent on it because you're not going to have this when you're playing in a game, which everything we're doing here is building up to competing better in the game. But if you become overly dependent on that data, right, it's the same thing like you'll watch golf. Like those guys don't give it. That they know what their numbers are when they're hitting a drive down the fairway. They don't care like, oh, what was my club head speed there? Like, right. And you see, if you watch PGA stuff as much as I have lately, I've really gotten into it because they'll have it's on ESPN Plus now. Like, no free ads, but they'll have the PGA on when there's no baseball on in like the morning or early afternoon. So I'll watch it. And on all like the big holes, like the big par threes or the big par fives, par fours, they have a TrackMan set up and all that. And so we get to watch all that number. But it'd be weird to see Rory McIlroy hit a drive, turn around and go, like, what was my club head speed there?
No, I completely.
What was the projected distance? Like they already know that stuff. They know what makes them successful. And you've got to get as an athlete to that point where I know what makes me successful. I know what my average spin rate is. I know what my vertical, horizontal break of my fastball is. And that way you can just trust it when it means something in a game. Where do you, from a hitting instructor standpoint, go like, all right, you're going to have the blast motion on for my benefit, not your benefit.
100%.
Like I want to know the data, but you can't know the data because when all this stuff comes to matter, you're not going to have that access to that data.
No, I like that question a lot, and it's actually something that I've been doing ever since I got the technology, and no one's ever asked about it. And so I'm actually really excited to answer this. At the end of every session that we do something called Feel Goods.
Right.
And that's where I will have a kid essentially just swing. We're not using any drills. We're not using any different bats. Like it's their game bat. I'll either do it from whatever max pitch pressure we just got done with.
Right.
And so I never look to increase pitch pressure because then you're going to have the hitter be more defensive and to try and have them do what we're trying to do while also being defensive. It doesn't work. And so we'll go through and we'll do a feel good round where they have to show me by a bat flip by them. I've got kids where they'll lay the bat down, tuck it into bed and read a bedtime story. They'll use the bat as a pogo stick. They'll, dig holes like it's a shovel.
You're like, you got to know I hit the shit out of that ball and I feel good about it.
And it doesn't count if they look at the technology first. So they have to hit, flip, then look.
Right.
And I don't count it if they look first, because to me, that's then the technology validating what they're doing versus, and again, that's what the drill is called, feel good. Like, right. If it doesn't feel good, it's not what we're looking for, because I don't want you feeling like bad in the box in a game. Now, your numbers might be high, but you're not feeling.
If you don't feel confident in it, whether the
confident are the two C's.
Right. I mean, I do the same thing with pitchers. Like if we're getting to that same aspect, like near the season starting or whatever, we'll have the TrackMan on, and it's the same thing. It's essentially the same thing where they'll throw a pitch and they'll look at me like, "Was that good?" And I go, "What do you think?
Yep.
Do you think that was good?" And and then he's like, "All you got to tell me, yes or no." It's like, do you think that was a good? If you ask me, I go like, "What do you think?" And you go yes or no. And I don't need like, well, I felt this and I felt that. Just like, tell me, was that a good pitch or was that not a good pitch? And then I will show you after you tell me yes or no, right? Because then you could say no, and it was a good pitch, and you're like, okay, and then you come to that realization,
Like,
okay,
hey.
that actually felt good. That's what a good feeling pitch feels like. But then if you throw a bad one, and then you've got to say, like, you've got to really know. And like when it comes to a game and when it comes to competing, like I said earlier, you're not going to have TrackMan. You're not going to have your blast motion on. You're not going to have a hit track. I mean, you kind of have a hit tracks because you'll see the ball fly. You'll see the ball fly,
Yeah.
right? But, the only technology you'll have as a pitcher, maybe depending on what field you play at, is your velocity. And that's the only thing. But you can only know so much from your velocity if you're throwing your fastball or your curveball. Right, throwing your curveball at whatever velocity is all well and good, but if it didn't move the way we've trained for it to move, that you've got to recognize, okay, that felt like shit, and obviously, and then you can tell, okay, that ball didn't move the way we've trained it to move, and it didn't feel that way. That was a bad pitch.
Yep.
Right. So it's how do you, data is very important, and I love data all the time, but there's not limitations to it, but it's when you get guys overly dependent on it.
It's the real versus feel idea. So the metrics are real. Your feeling is what's different. And if we can make it to where the big thing for me, and it happens every time, like I first get a guy, they'll hit one off the end or something like that. But because they hit off the end with their metal bat, big loud sound, bing, and they're like, oh, yeah, that was it. And they'll backflip, and then they'll look back, and they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That didn't go far. That wasn't hit hard, or that wasn't this, or that wasn't that. It's like, yeah, I know, like, how did it feel? And they're like, well, I did kind of get it off the end. It's like, okay, all right, so let's do another one. And then there'll be one where the amount of times where I'll look at a kid and I'm like, why didn't you bat flip on that?
Right.
And I've gotten to the point where guys are used to it, where I don't want them to say it's a feel good because I'm asking that question. Because the amount of kids where I'm like, why wasn't that feel good? They'll go, oh, it was.
They don't.
Like,
yeah, they don't know. Well, because they don't know what they're feeling.
And it's like, well, was that a feel good? Or are you only now saying yes because I'm asking you this question?
I've kind of like preempted you into an answer.
Exactly. It's like, you're not saying yes because you felt like it was a feel good. You're saying yes because of how I'm reacting. And that'll be another great podcast episode that we'll get into, where we're just talking about body language of an instructor. Because I think that's one of the things that goes underlooked a lot of the time. Kids use feedback a lot, and the most common feedback that they've had in their lives is seeing the person of authority and how they react. It's very difficult to see a kid take a shitty swing as an instructor that's not used to it and not react, because you're always going to get the or the whatever it is. So,
I am so bad at that, because I'm just like, I know what you're capable of and you're not doing it. It annoys the hell out of me.
So yeah, I just hit them with a stone face, where they'll look at me and now, depending on the kid, if it's a younger kid or someone that's needing to get help out of their shell, I am very like over the top, because I want them to feel comfortable being able to not match me, because you've been around, like, it's not common for a kid to kind of match my energy and stuff like that.
You were very energetic.
But it's like, you're down here, I need you here. Like, we need guys that are able to, one, connect that feel with the real, but then also, two, to understand, like, when you get it, like, it doesn't happen often. Like, we work for it to happen often, but it may not happen that often. So when you get it, you have to know, and you have to celebrate. You have to have fun.
Right.
Hitting has so much failure in it. Like, a lot of people don't realize, or maybe think of it as this, like, pitchers don't have to react. No. The hitter has to react.
No, so it's like what we talked about on your your other podcast you do. But it's the same. Yeah, hit chat, shout out. But exactly, it's like, I say this all the time, and I see it all the time when I see pitchers who are very like tedious, or like, that's not the right word. Yeah, timid on the mound. They're trying to throw. It's like you are the offensive player. Though you are on the defense, technically you are the offensive player, because the hitter has to react to you. You can do whatever you want. You can call whatever pitch you want, and if you have the confidence to do it, more often than not, you're going to be successful. Right. So it's one of those things like, well, I don't want to get hit. And like, well, then what have we trained for? the whole point of the assessment is to figure out what are you good at, what are you bad at. Now let's fix the bad things and reinforce the good things. That way, when you're on the mound, it's that like Ben Brewster has a really good tweet about it, and he reposts every once in a while, where it's like, it's one of the greatest feelings in the world to see the nicest kid in the world turn into the baddest motherfucker on the mound, right? Because that's the kid who's confident in the work he's put in to be the guy he is at that moment, right? He knows he's put the work to get his fastball velocity up 5-10 miles an hour. He's locked in his hand position or his release position to make sure he's got the grossest curveball possible, right? He's got a changeup that plays really well off of his fastball. Maybe he even has a fourth pitch, right? Like a slider or something like that, where he's like, I can throw whatever I want, and these guys are going to be scared shitless of me because they're not going to be comfortable in the box because they're trying to guess what pitch is coming. And once you get a hitter guessing, it's done. It's over. After that, anything that happens is pure luck.
Right. And that's 1,000%. And that goes back to like, dude, hitting's so hard.
Yeah.
And it's not that pitching isn't, but like hitting is just so hard.
Yeah.
To a point where if you have a 70% failure rate, like you're considered a great.
Right. Well, and it goes back to my original point where if you're a pitcher, you need to know your data. You need to know where you stand on different things, because now you can find what separates you. You can find what gets you better. Like maybe you have an average to mediocre fastball, but you're really good you spin the ball pretty well, so you have a good curveball and you have a good changeup. I've known kids who have horrible fastballs, but they throw really good off speeds.
Hey.
And if you can, like, and that becomes that thing, like maybe your fastball becomes your
Secondary.
It becomes your tertiary pitch, where your changeup and your slider are your main pitches. Like those are your big. You throw your slider and your changeup a lot, but you need to obviously set up those pitches with your fastball.
Big shout out podcast. Shout out to my guy Connor Burns. Dude topped out at 81 miles an hour,
right,
but had a plus changeup. Was a starting pitcher for us at Garden City.
Yeah,
like. At a college, topped at 81, 82.
Yeah.
But changeup just was nasty. And I hit against him. Dude, his changeup would come in, I think it was like 70-ish miles an hour, but that would make his fastball feel like 88.
Yeah.
Like his fastball to me would seem faster than dudes that threw faster fastballs because his off speed was just, elite. And he used it as a setup rather than trying to use his fastball to set up his other pitches. And that's just him knowing who he was. He wasn't trying to over-dominate. He knew that he wasn't going to blow fastballs by guys until he set them up with a changeup, until he set them up with that slider. And that's just knowing who you are. And you touched on it back when you were talking about the nice guy on the mound. Like, that dude's a dog because he's put in the work. Like, you don't put in work and only are successful. Like the trial and error, the failure rates that guys come in here. But the thing is, they're failing in training where other guys fail during the game.
Yep.
And they don't even get a chance to then work on it or get better or this or that. And again, it comes from knowing what you are, knowing where you stand, knowing your numbers, and building the best you that you possibly can. And until you know that information, you're not going to be able to. It's just a guess versus an assessment.
Yep. How do you know who you are? How do you know what your numbers are? Get assessed and get evaluated.
Where can they get an assessment?
You can always come to FAST. You can always go to the website and stuff like that. But moving on, we'll eliminate our shameless plugs. But get evaluated. Doesn't matter. I mean, I prefer you go here, but it doesn't matter where you go. If you go to a competent person and understand from the pitching side, what's your fastball velocity? What's the spin rate? How does it move? Same thing with your other pitches. What's your strike percentage? How well do you move? Are there inefficiencies in your mechanics, right? Because that might be a thing too, where you have bad pitches because your mechanics are terrible or inefficient, right? But how would you know if your mechanics are inefficient beyond, you look bad or you look uncomfortable on the mound? You don't know until you get evaluated. Something I've come to, as I've done this for longer and longer, is as long as you're efficient, I don't give a shit what your mechanics look like.
No.
There are guys who have the worst mechanics you've ever seen, but they're efficient and they throw hard. And so, I mean, are you going to tell a guy who throws 95 that he's got bad mechanics? No, because he does something right. He throws 95.
Right.
Right. But until you get assessed, until you get evaluated, you're always going to be just kind of you're rudderless in the ocean. Right.
You don't know where, land might be a few feet that way. but you're swimming that way, and then you swim that way, and then you doggy paddle that way. Now you're too tired to actually go in the right direction.
Right.
It's the same idea as high school guys. You're on a clock. You only have so much time. You can only doggy paddle for so long until you have to find either A, the direction you need to go, or B, you drowned.
Good. Returning to our favorite segment in the world.
Boom.
What did we call this? Did we come up with an official name? We just had to call it like Adventures in Facebook, right?
Adventures in Facebook.
All right. So hit me with it, Connor.
Dude, this one's tough. The title of this one is going to be...
Just bear in mind, you're trying to build off of last week's with the kicking out 8U softball players for sandbagging, right?
Yeah.
Is this going to top that, or is this...
I think that it'll be for the people in the comments to let me know.
All right. Let us know in the comments below.
So the name or the title of this one is Can I Pitch in a Game? Okay. So this is written from a coach, a 9U coach. Okay.
I got questions, but I'm going to hold off.
He types, how do I handle 11 of my 13 players that want to pitch? We're a 9U team. We were a rec team. We are now moving into a semi-competitive travel ball team. At this point, do I just tell them to go get lessons outside? How do I make it to where all of my guys are able to practice? How do I communicate with the players that are younger and less experienced than my starters that they can't pitch? I need help. So the question is, how do you tell 11 kids out of 13 on a 9U team that they're not allowed to pitch or catch? I have a really easy answer. You fucking don't. Like, it's a 9U team, dude. You let them pitch. Like, I've never heard of a semi-competitive travel ball team in my life.
I've heard that term. I've heard the term. I find it disingenuous.
But very, very. Because, like, what's a semi-competitive travel team?
Right.
Like, okay, you're going to, like, and at the 9U level, like, what is that?
I think I would love to know, is this parent's son or this coach's son one of those starting pitchers?
I would almost guarantee yes.
I would caution on the yes side, but it's almost like I always give people a lot of grief when they kind of pigeonhole them into a certain position.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a team that we work out with that they have a player on the team. I won't say who, but if they're listening, they know who it is. Where the coach wanted, I mean, he's the best. He was probably the best player on the team. He's a younger guy, but he's a big guy, bigger kid on the team. Actually, was younger than the rest of the players on his team. But they wanted to be a catcher. Like, I sit there, I'm like, and I've known this kid for many, many years because I've known his dad for many, many years. But like, that kid's not going to be a catcher when he grows up. Like that, like. He's going to be a first baseman. He's going to be a pitcher. And if he leans out or something like that, he could be a good like right fielder or something like that. But I mean, he's going to be a big, strong kid. He's not going to be a catcher. Don't put him in there. And I understand there's levels to need versus want. And and obviously catching is the most thankless position in the world, bar none in the game of baseball. Person who does the most work and gets the least amount of credit is the catcher.
Oh yeah.
But and every team needs at least two to make sure they have it, and so then everything you've got to make it. And I understand is like I think he's just more like I needed this kid to be a catcher. One, because he was good, but also I needed the depth at that position, right? Because you can't just have a kid. You can't for a 1 weekend tournament. You can't have two kids catching.
No,
because that's just too much.
No,
but then it's the same. At the same token, if you're going to be semi-competitive, you can't rely only on two pitchers.
No,
right. And at the 9U level, it's kind of like oh, you're just not going to pitch. And I don't understand that logic because they're 9 years old. They haven't hit puberty yet, and just expose them to all the positions. Yep. That way they have an idea. Because that's one of those things where me as a high school coach at this point in time, there are kids I'll put in the outfield because they need to get playing time or whatever, and they have no idea how to play outfield, or they have no idea. It's amazing. it's still amazing to me how many kids don't know how to hold a runner at second base as your shortstop or a second baseman because they just never teach it. Well, and then you put them there, you put a kid there to play because like, hey, I just need you to go play second base today, and they don't know how to do it because they never played. And it's like, I try to tell parents of younger guys and coaches of younger guys, just let them play all the positions. Let Timmy play catcher this game. Let him play first. Let him play center field. Play left field. And the problem becomes then there's an implication like, well, if he becomes all really good at all positions, then he's not going to be good at any positions. Like, okay, so what? Then you find out what he's better at. Maybe he becomes really good at center field. He's a legit center fielder. Then he can, okay, you're a good outfielder. Now you can focus on that when you get into high school and stuff like that. But until then, I try to tell people just be a jack of all trades, because then kids just don't have the competence or the athletic competence to be a master of anything. So it's like, be a jack of all trades, not a master of none, right? And there's arguments for and against that idea. It's just like, just let them play. Let them play every position. Let them get exposed to those things because that's how you build a better baseball player. Because if you can get guys to know where everyone's supposed to be on the diamond, they become a better baseball player and they can work on different aspects of the game, even if they don't play that position, right? If you're a first baseman, you need to know where to stand. And you need to have a solid expectation that your pitcher knows that he needs to back up third base on this play, or your third baseman needs to be in the right spot to make a cut play, or where shortstop is supposed to be, your second base is supposed to be. You need to be able to that way can you be confident that you're going to be able to get your job done, but you have to learn that, right? And just saying you can't pitch because you're not one of my top two guys, then that kid's not. How's that kid going to know whenever his name is called one day? How many guys like, oh, I've never pitched before. It's like, why? Everyone should pitch.
Yep.
Everyone on your team should pitch. Everyone on your team should play catcher at least once. Everyone should play shortstop at least once. Because at the end of it, these games don't freaking matter.
None of them do.
And I think it just comes from that idea that like, oh, we want to be competitive and wait. It's like, and that's fine and all that, but remember, these kids aren't going to remember these games in 5 years, right? They're going to more just remember, oh, I got this experience. I got to play all these positions, the trophies that they like. When I got to high school, I just like looked at all my AYL trophies. I'm just like, I don't need these things.
Shout out AYL, baby.
Shout
Who'd you
out
play for?
The DC Dolphins, baby. That's what we were. I don't know. I don't even know if they still exist, but
Nah.
I don't even know if the AYL. I think AYL still exists.
Were you a Arapaho or Aurora? You're Arapaho, right?
Yeah, Arapaho.
Okay, I played for the Spartans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but as well as like, do I remember any? I remember like key aspects. Like I remember like my first home run. I remember like there's different things I remember, but like I don't remember the games. I don't remember the scores. I don't remember, how many championships we won. No, I don't remember any of that. I just remember I got to play these positions. I was a good player. I got all this experience, and that's what at that level it's about learning the game. All right, and that's what infuriates me is like they put higher cost on winning the game as opposed to learning the game, right? And that's what annoys me, and where I see how youth ball is so broken is then they get so focused on winning whatever game that they get told how to do something, how to do this, how to do that, how to play just this one position. And then I put them somewhere else when they get to high school where it really starts to matter. And
They
then
don't scale.
yeah, and it doesn't scale. Or I put a kid who's naturally a second baseman, like I need you to go to left field today and all that. And they're just like, oh, I don't know how the outfield works.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you need to be experienced in everything. And that's what I can't stand about youth ball coaches. So there are some good, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of good youth ball coaches, but there are some that are just like, what are you doing?
For me, like reading this, and we've talked about in the past, to me, this is a parent that hasn't had a older kid go through it yet.
Must be like their first kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's all or nothing at this 9U, that it makes or breaks, their entire life, whether they succeed in this one game or this one tournament. For me, the thing that, to piggyback on what you said, like sometimes you put players in position not to see if they're going to succeed, but to show them that they would fail. Like, you have 11 of your 13 players asking to pitch and catch. Not all of them are going to be pitchers and catchers, but until you have them show themselves that they're not the greatest at that, like, they're going to keep asking. Like,
Right.
the itch on the that they have is not going to change because you just say no. And the other thing you said, catching is the most thankless job. And I have a major theory is that it is until you experience it.
Right.
Like for me, I played catcher just a couple of times going through like middle school, not too much, but I know what those dudes are expected of and what they go through. And so if you've ever played for me, if you've played against me, like I give my catchers praise all the time. Little things, just running down to first base, backing up a ground ball, trying to beat the runner there. Like
Right.
I go crazy for that dude because I know it's not a thing. Like you don't get that very often. And for me, I think if we had every single player go through being a catcher and understand what the expectations are, they'll start thanking their catcher a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Like you don't know what you don't know. And so another great example is if you've never played second base, when you're going through doing bunt coverages, the first baseman crashes generally. As a second baseman, you got to get over. I remember there was one time where our coach had set up a cone and said, second baseman, you guys are cheating. You have to start here and you can't break until the ball gets hit on the ground.
Right.
It's like, okay. Well, all of us were late to getting to first base every single time. And we had every other teammate just screaming and yelling at us until the coach went and realized, oh, I set this up like 100 feet away from first base. Like, no, Usain Bolt isn't getting to first base.
I set you up to fail.
And the thing is like, my teammates weren't backing us up, though. Our teammates were yelling at us.
Right.
And until they would have been put in that situation and realized, oh, I would fail here too, they were going to just be mad. They're just going to be upset. And so I think for, to be a 9U coach and one to think that you have your set pitching rotation, that's ridiculous. One of your starting pitchers is going to have a 9U birthday party. They're going to go and miss your games.
Right.
Like, that for me is like, this is where kids need to experience and learn and get used to that. Like maybe the quietest kid on the team has to be a catcher. Guess what? You can't be quiet as a catcher, but maybe that's what they're needing to break out of that shell. Like them understanding how you were saying earlier, like where each position needs to go on certain things. Like that is just them grasping a better knowledge and understanding of baseball in itself rather than baseball at that level and in that position. And like, for me, that's where this is just tough. Like this is to have a 9U coach to think it's a bad thing that you have, 11 of your 13 players that want to pitch and catch. Dude, newsflash, wait till you get a little bit older and you're playing 13, 14, no one's going to want to catch.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to pitch like that.
And the same thing is you go and you elevate up the levels. Like to say like I have my two pitchers. And I have my two pitchers and all that, like, and that can get you by fine at 9U, yeah. But you go with this team for longer into like the 13, 14 range.
Shoot, just 12,
even 12. You're going to start realizing, oh shit, I need more pitchers, right? Like you need to be able to teach guys and get them invested. Like I want guys to be, I can play any position. Just tell me where I need to go. Right. And I think that goes like what you were saying earlier about, or what I was saying earlier, but you elaborated on it a little bit more. But it's one of those things like you have to play the position before you realize how important that is and what's the importance of that role. And I think it goes back to like those old school stereotypes of like, if you play right field on your 9U baseball team, means you're the worst player in the game, or you're the worst player on the team, right? Or you play this position, or you play that position, whatever everyone thinks is like the worst position, right? But then you have to play it, and you see, and you have to understand, you have to be able to grasp, like, okay, at 9U, is outfield that important? Most likely not, because how many 9U guys are getting the ball into the outfield in general? But the more you get exposed to that, and the more you play it as you go up the ranks, you begin to realize, oh shit, outfield is a very important position, right? Once balls start getting hit out there, like I think I would argue, scare the shit out of me.
I just shit himself.
I just hear it. Stop. I was like, what the fuck?
What the fuck's going on here? Strider learned how to fucking speak. That'd be insane.
I was like, there was like a ghost or something like that. But anyway, we'll cut that.
That's the ghost of Jamie over there.
God damn it.
Is it rolling though?
I think my camera probably stopped, but I'm not too worried.
All right.
As long as we have the main feed, I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm with it, dude.
But because I think I want to use these two cameras more for social media stuff, as opposed to like actual
like flipping back and forth.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's tough.
Yeah.
Well, until we switch to Streamlabs,
maybe,
and then I'll show you how we can do it for free.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, as we were going. My heart literally dropped. I was like, what the fuck was that?
Dude, you should have seen your face.
I'm sure it was awesome.
Oh wait, if it wasn't your camera that stopped, if it was one of the others, I want you to go back and watch your face. Because you were like talking.
It was all right. Anyway.
Imagine if you were drinking too.
I know, right? I know. Where was I? Oh, okay. But it's one of those things where we tell guys, out like I would say, bar none, the best athletes on the baseball team are usually your shortstops, your center fielders, and your right fielders. And left field can be whatever. And that's why Barry Bonds played left field, because he wasn't very mobile.
Ramirez.
Right, but it's like you have to remember, like, as you age and as you get older and kids get bigger and stronger, outfield's very important, right? The same way we need to teach kids how to play catcher, because catcher is the very important position. Obviously, you're the quarterback of the field. You need to make sure where everyone needs to go, right? And the only way you get exposure to that, and the only way you learn that shit, is playing that position, right? And same thing with first base. You need to know where you need to be on bunt coverages if teams bunt, right? You need to know how to competently field the position, because like what you're saying, like Timmy's got a birthday party you got to go to, and now we don't have our starting first baseman. I need someone to go play first base, and you need to know how to competently do it. Right? It's the same thing like you see in summer ball all the time. Like where do you learn guys are actually really good at a position is when it's like of necessity that person has to play that position. Yeah. Like you as a summer ball coach, I've never coached in the summer, although it's some RBI stuff, but like, okay, I need you to go play first base because Johnny, who usually plays first base for us, is out of town on vacation. Yep. And then little Jimmy plays first base for the first time. Like, oh, wow, you're actually pretty good at that.
Hey, maybe we add that to the arsenal.
Exactly. All the way until you get to high school, be good at least 5 positions, I'd say. Yeah. Because then that's going to help you when you get to high school. Is I can play this position, I can play that position. Coach, go tell me where I need to go. Where do you want me to go play? I'll go play it. All right? Because then you're going to look really good to a coach, and like, okay, I can go put that person in that position. And then when you get that position and you are competent in it, or you're better than anybody else, now you're that starter at that position. All right. And like maybe it's center field, maybe it's right field, right? And no one wants to play right field up to the age of 10 but now you become a starting first base, you become the right fielder for your team, and all of a sudden balls get hit to you and you become very, very valuable.
Right. And the thing for me is then also like, one, how many guys transition from not being a catcher to a catcher in high school? Like it doesn't happen. Like pretty much how you find your catchers is they've just been a catcher for a while. Like your 12U catchers, they're catchers because they were catchers when they were 11. Your 14U catchers, they're catchers because they were catchers when they were 13. Like that's just how it like works out. And so one, if you're at a 9U level, not allowing guys to experience that, you're kind of almost pigeonholing them to not being able to play that position. And that I feel like that's more for catcher than anything else. Like I feel like I think I've met one person transition to being a catcher after high school, or like from freshman year on. Like I've met one person. Everyone else goes from being a catcher to not being a catcher. And then when you're looking at it, when you're, let's say this dude's coaching the same team and they're 12U, like, you're not going to want little Timmy who's never pitched. Like if little Timmy is not good enough to pitch on your 9U team, like what is going to make you think that here in 2-3 years, he's going to develop into being able to be a pitcher?
Right.
Like that is your job. And like, whether you're a dad coach, which after reading this, I think we're concluding that he is, like dad coaches, like, we're not expecting you to do private lessons, but if you are putting together a team and 11 of your 13 dudes want to be a pitcher or a catcher, do a practice where all you do is pitching stuff.
Yeah.
Like, do a practice where all you do is catching stuff. Like,
there are plenty of sample practice plans where you can get half the, if you practice twice a week, you can get half the guys to pitch one day, half the guys to pitch the other day.
but it's almost better to have that many guys that want to pitch and catch than to have like only one or two.
I would be so phenomenal if I had I would love my job more if I didn't have like, it would be such a great problem. Like, who do I pitch today?
Exactly.
That would be such a great problem to have.
Like, and at the 9U level, you're only going, like, dude, at 12U, we would go through like 4 pitchers a game, 4 pitchers a game. And it's just like, I don't know, freaking Timmy was blowing a bubble and he spit his gum down on the ground, stepped on his gum, and now he's crying in the corner. And it's like, all right, well, Timmy's not going out to be able to pitch this the next inning. Who's on the bench? Who wants to get warm? Who wants to get ready?
Right.
Pigeonholing yourself to that as a coach, but then also
pigeonholing your athletes like that.
And then pigeonholing your athletes. Like, you're pigeonholing everyone at a 9U level where it doesn't matter what they're doing. Like, to me, that's why I brought this in and thinking it might top last week's. I don't know.
That one just more makes me mad. The first one was funny. The first one was just like zero self-awareness. The second one's more like, hey, I don't want to limit my athletes, but I'm going to limit my athletes.
Yeah.
And that's what annoys me.
No, I think he wants to limit his athletes. I think that's the goal. Literally, how do I tell kids when they come up and ask, can I pitch in a game? How do I tell them no? It's literally like what he's asking. And it's like, dude, you're at 9U. You should never have the word no. Like, when having a player
like, hey coach, can I pitch? Yes, you can.
Like, yeah, like, you find a way. When you have a kid coming up to you asking to like be a part of it, and a time where baseball, they think baseball's dying,
right?
Like, that is not the time to tell a kid no. That is a time where it's like, let's figure this out, and if we can't get you in the game, we'll throw a bullpen on the side,
right?
Or we'll do this, or we'll do that, or like, dude, at 9U, like, I don't know, you're still making the lineup depending on who brought snacks after the game. Like, you're leading off there, Billy. Like, dude, you brought the fruit snacks with the fruit gushers inside.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you're leading off, dude. Like, appreciate your mom. You know what
I'm
saying?
It's just, if you're a coach, just get creative. And I think that's what's great about that level. I've never coached that level and I don't plan on it.
It's brutal.
But just be creative.
Yeah. Like,
don't pigeonhole yourself as a coach, right? Your point as a coach is to expose these kids to different things in that game. And that's where I think we miss the youth, and the youth levels is missing. It's just they don't teach kids how to have fun and enjoy just playing and learning how this game works. And that's why the average drop off in this game is 12. Right. So those kids have 3 years. And if you don't teach them how to have fun and teach them how to get exposed to the game, they're not going to enjoy it and they're going to cut out. All right. That's what I think I want to say with not so much certainty, but like, yeah, but 12 is when kids quit baseball.
Well, the field gets bigger, the bat gets bigger, because now that you're using different bat restrictions. Also, you start incorporating fastballs and gravity balls that pitchers are throwing. And then also that, like, kids don't want to suck.
Right.
Like, it is not fun sucking. I don't know, like, the last time anyone listening has actually tried to go do an athletic thing, or even is playing video games, or
with the intent to fail.
Doing anything where you want to succeed and you're not, like, that is a blow to the confidence. And as a 11, 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old, like, I don't know how to handle that. I don't know, like, I haven't built ways for me to go about that. And so, it's to have a coach at that level wanting to not help their players gain experience again at the 9U level. For me, that's the piece where it's like, that's disappointing.
Right. Thomas Fast on Instagram. You can follow Fast Baseball on TikTok and on Instagram at Fast Baseball. And you can follow Connor at
Twitter is going to be fast_RBI, just like Instagram and also TikTok. YouTube, though, is going to be fast_RBI development with more content out on the blog, and also another podcast on the channel.
We appreciate you all for listening, and we will see you next week.